Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you're coming in from. I'd like to welcome you to our Freelance Friday here. And today we're going to be talking about an interesting quote that I just ran across from David Bowie. And he, as many of you know, passed away. I think it was a couple years ago. And I had never seen this quote before. Don't know why. Um, but it's kind of interesting, and it was all about aging successfully. And let me call the quote up here so I get it exactly. Where did he go? 1 second here. There we go. Let's see if we can get the rest of that off the page. But it was as some of you might know, he was very active late in his career. Let me share this screen here so you can see what I'm seeing here. Share screen. There we go. There's my screen sharing, but we want to share a tab. There we go. And so aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been. And he said that in January 10th of 2020, just before the pandemic started. And I think just after he released, I want to say, his 25th album. And for those of you listening to this on the playback, or those of you that are participating live, I'd love to know your thoughts on, is that a real thing or not? What's your take? I know one of the things that always has kind of frustrated me is you see these quotes that they, so and so performer and still going strong. And for me, that's a fiction. I mean, to deny that our interest, our bodies, our mental processes are not changing is sort of kind of a false situation there. It sets up an expectation that is not necessarily very cool. The idea that somebody is denying that they're any different in their 60s than they were in their 30s, to me, seems to be a fiction that doesn't really help you get the most out of the next period of time. And at Barefoot Consultants, we focus quite a bit on the idea of having an amazing next decade. And the thing that I think that David Bowie did in his amazing next decade, and also in his amazing last decade, is he continued to create and experiment with music, and a lot of it was very different than things he'd done before. So to say he was still going strong would not quite be the right thing to say. To say he was still creating in new and innovative ways and learning new things would be a much more accurate statement in terms of what was going on with him. And so I think that's kind of an interesting perspective on that. And, of course, his lifetime was focused on music. And for most of our lifetimes, baby boomers, people aged 50 plus, you may have had a career, you may have had interest, you may have had hobbies. I've had a lifelong hobby of photography. I've had a lifelong interest in personal improvement, that kind of thing. And the things that I'm doing in those areas now are not repeating the same thing I did before, but innovating in new ways. And as I came across this quote, it just gave me a whole new lens to sort of look through this perspective and understand it and understand what he was really talking about there. And I just so much like what he had to say. And it's not about, you know, doing the same old stuff and trying to keep up. It's about using the wisdom that you've accumulated, using, in some cases, the new ways you've learned how to use your body, because it wasn't quite the same body that you had 25 or 30 years ago. You know, there were things that you did well back then and things that you do well right now, but they're not the same, you know, and that still going strong is just kind of creates this fiction for me that you know, you're doing what you did, and for some gift of genetics and maybe health regime or that kind of thing, you're able to perform at the same levels as previously. And what I see in all of this is what you're actually doing is, you know, you're having to change and adjust, you know, every few years to the changes that are going on with both your brain and then certainly your physicality. And so I love to see that people adapting to those changes and doing new things. And that's at least what gives me so much joy, and did when I first started freelancing, is I was able to, because I was going it out on my own, and this was 23 years ago, I was able to sort of design my freelancing so I worked on the things that I really enjoyed working on. More importantly, I worked on the things that were challenging to me at that moment, not something that would have been challenging to me years previous or sometime in the future, but it helped me grow, and it also helps with the learning process. And this is what happens every time you're working on one of these job and project networks where you're picking up assignments, is you're getting an opportunity to serve a fellow human being, a company, whatever it might be. And you're typically innovating a little bit. You're mostly doing something that you already know to do. Because you pick the jobs that you focus on, you're able to pick the things that are interesting to you. And this is one of the biggest arguments we ever have with somebody that's trying to learn how to do freelancing is don't think about what you have to do in order to make money. Think about what you want to do and what skills you can bring to the party to earn money. And these may be things that you've never done in the past as a money earning strategy, but certainly with your decades of experience, wisdom, and learning, you've got all kinds of things that have popped onto the page that are interesting to you. And the thing I like about freelancing so much is that it taps into skills that you already have, but it also causes you to stretch a little bit, because every time you get into a situation where you're working with another human being, there's always a little bit of learning how to communicate, making sure you're on the same page, making sure you're desiring the same outcomes. And so it's kind of you know, it's a little bit different every day. And I remember talking, this was maybe 30 years ago, to a corporate pilot. He flew corporate jets, and he typically flew around a certain region of the United States and was usually going to the same cities because the company he flew for had, you know, business operations in those cities. And so he's pretty familiar with the territory. You know, the in and out of the airports, all that was familiar. And I said, do you ever get bored doing this? He said, you know, I would get bored doing this, but the weather is different every day. The conditions are different every day. The air traffic is different every day. So given all those variables, I get to adjust my skills to meet the current situation, which, statistically is not exactly like any other situation I've faced before. And so that's how he brought meaning to the work that he did and how he found that interest. And certainly, as I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s and had people in my family that I knew, grandparents, uncles, great uncles, that kind of thing. Um, they all seem to mellow in their later life. I heard stories of this one being very opinionated, or that one being one that was prone to argue or something like that. But by the time I was having conversations with them, they seemed to have a more worldly point of view. And so that's this David Bowie quote just really fits for me. It's not about keeps going strong. It's about keeping creative, staying in that creative mode. How do you do that? How do you keep learning? How do you keep helping others? How do you improve your skill set? You can take skills you already have and at almost any age improve on those skills. You may not improve on your downhill skiing skills at age 70, but you might improve on your writing skills at age 70. Some of the most successful writers have been in their 60s and 70s. And in fact, some of the most successful entrepreneurs have been in their 60s and 70s. A story that I've been hearing for years is that Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken in part with the money that came from his first Social Security check. So interesting time to be alive. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. Be sure, if you're listening to this on the playback, to put any comments you might have on that. What's your perspective on aging successfully? What are the things that nourish you today? Some people are trying to get back to that fitness level maybe they had in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Probably not going to happen. How do you adjust? How do you challenge your mind? How do you focus on things? How do you earn money? Given that we're in a difficult period of inflation right now, and the economy's kind of going sideways, a lot of people looking at ways to earn a little bit extra money, and what options are there for you. So look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great week freelancing. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.